There was always noise in their apartment. The hum of the ceiling fan, the traffic below, the TV that Adil kept on even when no one was watching. But mostly, it was the noise of their arguments. Not the kind that began with shouting, but the kind that started small and hollow like the creak of a door before it breaks off its hinges. Zara had once loved noise. She loved the sound of rain on her window, the buzz of the city, even the chatter of strangers in cafes. She said it made her feel alive, part of something. But over time the noise in her life changed. It became sharp, heavy, the kind that fills every corner until there's no room left to breathe. Adil didn't notice it, of course. He thought their life was perfect or close enough. He worked long hours, came home late, ate dinner without much conversation, and scrolled through his phone while she spoke about her day. When she asked him if he'd listened, he would smile, that small, practiced smile, and say, "Of course." But he hadn't. He never did. Zara had learned to recognize that smile. It was the same one he used when she showed him her art. The half-hearted kind, polite but empty. Once she had painted a portrait of him. A soft oil rendering of his face under morning light. He glanced at it for barely 3 seconds before saying, "You made my nose too big." That night she stopped painting him altogether. Every few weeks she tried to bring it up. The distance, the silence, the way they had become strangers sleeping in the same bed. But each time he found a way to make her feel small. "You're overthinking. Why do you always have to ruin a good evening? You take everything so personally." He said it gently, never shouting, but the effect was the same. Her words began to shrink, then vanish. The girl who once filled a room with laughter now spoke like she was apologizing for existing. One evening, after another quiet dinner, Zara sat by the window, sketchbook on her lap. The street below was alive with honking cars, street vendors, and children running after a ball. She could hear the city's pulse, steady and free, so unlike her own. Adil was in the other room talking on the phone, his tone brisk and authoritative. The sound of his voice used to make her feel safe. Now it only reminded her of how much power he had over the space they shared. Every word he spoke seemed to erase a piece of her. Zara turned the page in her sketchbook. Her hands moved on their own, slow, deliberate strokes forming something she hadn't planned. When she finished, she stared at it for a long time. A woman standing at an open door, her figure half lost in shadow. There were no tears, no words, just the stillness of someone ready to walk away. Adil came into the room, glanced at her drawing and said, "Another sad one?" Then he went to the kitchen without waiting for an answer. She looked at him, the man she had once thought she couldn't live without, and realized with startling clarity that she already was. For the first time in months she didn't feel angry. She didn't feel broken. He just felt done. And that quiet, that still, calm acceptance, scared her more than anything else ever had. That night, as she turned off the lamp and slipped into bed beside him, she knew. The next time she left a room she wouldn't come back. Zara woke before dawn. The city outside was still half asleep, the first light stretching across the sky like a quiet promise. She moved softly, careful not to wake Adil. For a long moment she just stood there watching him sleep, his face calm, untouched by the sharpness that usually colored his words. In that fragile morning light, he almost looked like the man she had fallen in love with. Almost. She turned away before her heart could betray her resolve. She didn't pack much. A few clothes, her old sketchbook, a small pouch of paintbrushes, and one photograph. A younger version of herself laughing on a beach somewhere in Karachi. That girl seemed like a stranger now, but Zara wanted to find her again. When she reached the door, her hand trembled on the handle. Not out of fear, out of finality. The kind of trembling that comes when you realize a chapter is closing forever. She looked back once, memorizing the room. The half-empty coffee cup on the counter, his jacket tossed carelessly on a chair, the fading smell of burnt toast. Ordinary things, but together they told the story of her life. A story she no longer wanted to read. She thought about leaving a note. Something simple, maybe even kind. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore." But what words could explain years of silence? What apology could describe how small she had become? So she left nothing. Not a letter, not a goodbye, not a single word. By the time Adil woke, the morning sun had filled the apartment. At first he didn't notice. He called out her name, expecting her voice to answer from the kitchen, maybe humming softly like she used to. But there was no response. The coffee pot was cold. Her shoes were gone. Her ring, the one he'd given her on their second anniversary, lay neatly beside her mug, catching the sunlight like an accusation. At first he laughed. "She's probably gone to the market," he muttered. But as the hours passed, that confidence began to crumble. He called her phone switched off. He called her friends. None had seen her. Even her parents didn't know. The realization came slowly, like a weight pressing down on his chest. She was really gone. Adil searched every corner of her absence, hoping to find something. A message, a clue, even a trace of anger. But there was nothing. The apartment felt different now, wider, emptier. The silence was deafening. For the first time, Adil understood how loud silence could be. Every tick of the clock echoed in his mind. Every shadow seemed to mock him. He tried to convince himself that she'd come back, that it was just a fight. But deep down he knew this was different. She hadn't stormed out in fury or slammed the door behind her. She had left quietly, and that somehow was worse. Days turned into weeks, and Zara's absence began to live in the apartment like a ghost. Her perfume still lingered faintly on the curtains, her sketchbook sat open on the table, a half-finished drawing staring back at him every morning. At first, Adil couldn't bring himself to touch it. Then one night, in a moment of frustration, he closed it and shoved it into a drawer. But even then, it felt as if her silence seeped through the wood, filling the room with a sound only he could hear. He told himself he wasn't to blame. That she'd always been dramatic, too emotional. That she'd come crawling back once she realized how the world really worked. But deep down, beneath his practiced calm, a small, unsettling truth began to grow. She wasn't coming back, and maybe, just maybe, it was his fault. He went to work as usual, but his focus was fractured. During meetings, his mind wandered to the empty chair at home. When someone laughed too loudly, he flinched, remembering how Zara's laughter used to fill their home. That bright, unrestrained sound he once found too noisy. Now he would have given anything to hear it again. Her friends stopped picking up his calls. Her parents refused to talk to him beyond polite formalities. It was as if the entire world had chosen to carry her secret, leaving him locked out of it. Each day the silence around him thickened, pressing down until even breathing felt like effort. Then one morning, scrolling through his phone, he saw her name again. Not in a message but in a post. Zara Malik Solo Art Exhibition. The quietest goodbye. The announcement stopped him cold. The cover image was a painting. An apartment bathed in pale moonlight, a coffee cup left on the counter, a silver ring glinting beside it. His chest tightened. It was their apartment. He stared at it for a long time. Every detail was perfect. The shadows, the stillness, the loneliness. It was beautiful, haunting. And it was his punishment. The exhibition went viral online. People praised the emotion in her art, calling it a masterpiece of quiet defiance. Critics wrote about a woman reclaiming her voice through silence. Adil read every comment, each one a knife twisting deeper. He tried to tell himself it didn't matter, that she was just chasing attention. But the truth gnawed at him. She hadn't shouted, cursed, or sought revenge. She turned her pain into something immortal. For the first time, Adil saw himself clearly, not as the man in control but as the shadow in her story. The one who turned beauty into silence. And now, that silence had found its voice. In every stroke of her brush, in every stranger's admiration. Zara was gone, but her echo was everywhere. The gallery was crowded that evening. Soft lights, quiet music, people moving slowly as if afraid to disturb the art that hung like memories on white walls. Adil stood near the entrance, invisible among them, his collar stiff, hands buried in his pockets. It had been nearly a year since Zara left, but time hadn't dulled the ache. It had sharpened it. He told himself he had come here out of curiosity, but the truth was simpler. He missed her, and this was the closest he could get to her world again. Every painting told a story. The waiting room, unspoken apologies, still life with silence. Each one captured something he recognized but had never noticed when she was beside him. The loneliness, the quiet suffocation, the slow fading of color. Her pain hung in the air like perfume, delicate, lingering, undeniable. And then he saw it. The final piece at the end of the hall. The loudest revenge. It was large, nearly floor to ceiling. A woman stood on a balcony overlooking a city bathed in dawn light. Her back was turned, hair loose, the sky around her alive with color, gold, pink, blue, the first breath of morning. Below her the world was still asleep, But she was awake, radiant, free. Adil felt something inside him fracture. This wasn't the Zara he remembered, the quiet, apologetic woman who had tiptoed through their life. This was her reborn. He stepped closer, studying the brushstrokes. Her signature sat neatly in the corner, small but certain. For a moment he almost smiled, proud, broken, regretful all at once. He didn't see her until she appeared beside the painting. Zara stood poised and calm, greeting guests, laughing softly with an art critic. She looked different, not just in appearance but in presence. There was a peace about her that no one could steal now. Their eyes met across the room. For a brief second time folded in on itself. He wanted to go to her to apologize, to say all the words he had swallowed for years. But when he took a step forward, she turned to someone else. A quiet, graceful movement, almost like forgiveness, almost like indifference. No words. No confrontation. No revenge as he understood it. Just silence, dignified, complete, and devastating. Adil stood there long after the crowd thinned. The music faded, lights dimmed, and he was left staring at the painting of the woman he had lost. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she wanted peace. And that peace, that calm freedom, was the one thing he could never give her. When he finally walked out into the night, the city was alive with noise. Traffic, laughter, horns. But all he could hear was silence, echoing in his chest. Because she had left without a word. And that silence was still speaking.